This is Dr. Lam welcoming you to our discussion on adrenal exhaustion, stage 3D, near failure. Just by way of brief review, there are 4 phases to adrenal exhaustion, which is stage 3 of AFS, and in stage 3A, we have a HPA axis dysregulation, therefore resulting in hypoglycemia, low blood pressure, and the beginning of a catabolic state. Symptoms are very mild. And as we go into 3B, the downstream hormonal axis, such as the OAT axis, becomes dysregulated, resulting in hypothyroid type symptoms, PMS, estrogen dominance, as well as increasing fatigue that's mild to moderate. Now, when we enter the stage 3C, the person comes into a disequilibrium state, activating the autonomic nervous system and its various branches, resulting in the body flooded with a sea of norepinephrine, both in the brain as well as systemically. As that is happening, the epinephrine release, which is modulated by the adrenal medullary hormonal system, is also put on full force. As we move forward to 3C, in the later part of 3C, we see a gradual dominance of the epinephrine type effect versus the norepinephrine type effect, which is more prominent in the early part of phase 3C. So because epinephrine and norepinephrine are essentially similar, just difference in potency, generally speaking, you see more severe symptoms of epinephrine as you progresses through the end part of stage 3C well into 3D. As we discuss 3D, we're going to be predominantly discussing the adrenal fatigue in terms of quite a severe state of dysfunction. Remember that the body's strategy in dealing with unrelenting stress involves reduction in energy expenditure by down-regulating non-essential functions such as metabolism, while at the same time redirecting limited amount of energy resources to vital organs such as the brain and the heart. As we know, this process has been well underway in previous phases, but by the time phase 3D is reached, the body is nearly exhausted in its effort. In this phase, the body, in its all-out heroic effort to maximize chances of survival, continues to downregulate. However, and unfortunately, this downregulation further reduces vital hormonal output, exaggerating a downward vicious cascade. Cortisol output is low throughout the day, or you get what we call a flat curve, while epinephrine and norepinephrine are starting to flood the body, especially with epinephrine, is modulated by the AHS. No system is spared from this negative impact, and that's why clinical symptoms of stage 3D is very, very convoluted and confusing to say the least. While survival is really not a problem, the body is severely decompensated and hormonally struggling just to make ends meet. Routine blood tests are still normal at this time, and that is somewhat confusing. Indeed, the adrenal system of hormonal control is near failure, and what makes this clinical state so perplexing is that for the most part, as we said, the laboratory test continues to be normal, and yet one can see very, very clearly that the body is literally falling apart if the symptoms reported are to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, this is a main issue because most sufferers continue to report severe symptoms only to be discounted by their conventional doctors. And sufferers in this stage would describe them as the living dead. Now, bear in mind that 3D is quite severe, and before you get to 3D, you actually have a borderline 3C and the 3D area, and within that borderline is usually the last attempt that most people have to call and ask for help, because by the time they get to 3D, it may be too late, so to say. Now, backing up, it's very important to understand that without adequate hormones to regulate the various bodily functions, along with the autonomic nervous system dysregulation in this phase, the body is really in a total disarray. You see a catabolic state leading to weight loss, reduced gastric stimulation, the reproduction system is shutting down, there's a severe loss of muscle tone, so no organ is spared. The body is really on the brink of surrendering. If you look at it from the big picture perspective, it no longer has the energy to try to work its way out of the severe weakness, and person are usually bedridden by the time they get into borderline 3C and 3D, and by 3D they are incapacitated. So in stage 3D, the adrenals have lost most of their ability to serve as the body's stress control center, and not only that, they become now hypersensitive for reasons we don't quite understand, and they react negatively to any attempts to jumpstart them. So much of what we know about this phase comes from clinical observations, and much more research is necessary. Fortunately, only a very small percentage of people with adrenal fatigue progress to this phase. At this time, the traditional medication and nutritional supplements that were successful before in earlier stages tend to backfire. The body is inherently unstable. In terms of physical activity, we mentioned earlier, many are incapacitated and bedridden due to fatigue. Many actually need help with daily activities such as driving, shopping, cooking, and some may be able only to stay up and walk around for a few minutes at a time before they become so tired. We know this is the body's last resort, way to conserve energy. And as this takes place in one organ system, the rest of the body's down regulates too. Digestion and removal of metabolic decreases, so there is a drop in basal metabolic rate. We mentioned earlier about a no more regular period as the reproductive system is essentially shut down. Low libido is the norm, and no system can escape from this body-wide energy-conserving effect. And this is a slow-motion control collapse engineered by the bodies as the only way it knows how to ensure survival, to keep energy expenditure low and to keep the vital system going. So understanding this big picture helps us to interpret the many signs and symptoms of this phase. So let's begin and look at the signs and symptoms of stage 3D. And we know already that the body is unstable. We talked about that earlier. The adrenal crashes occur frequently. Delayed recovery is the norm. And in addition, there are many unpleasant symptoms that seem to follow. And these symptoms may be already present in earlier phases, but they just seem to be so severe and so extreme. And you will see these words over and over again because indeed, this is really greater intensity of this decompensation that separates this from the later part of 3C and the earlier part of the other stages. So first, we have gastric bloating with jaw tightness after eating, and only a small amount of food or liquid can be tolerated at one time. So for some reasons we don't understand, the body seems to be entering a state of a clam down mode, where digestive apparatus appears to reject any attempt to ingest food. The body may even resist a nourishing liquid such as soups or broth, and in severe cases the individual may only be able to tolerate a few spoonfuls at a time, and rest is often needed before the next attempt. Other symptoms can also include some or many of the following that we are going to be discussing here now. So this list is not complete, and not everybody has all the symptoms or signs. Next, there is an extreme sensitivity to a minute dose of iodine, herbs, glandulars, and vitamins, an extreme paradoxical reaction or unusual reactions. The more advanced the phase, the more this sensitivity increases. An amount as little as 10 milligrams of vitamin C may already be too much. Now, bear in mind, one orange has about 65 milligrams of vitamin C. So most people that are healthy take up to 1,000 to a few thousand milligrams of vitamin C. And imagine a person who cannot even tolerate 10 milligrams. So we can't describe the exact physiological mechanism, but poor clearance is likely an important factor. The culprit may not be the natural compound itself, but the inability of the body to clear the byproducts promptly, leading to an internal buildup and resulting toxic state. Now, it's important to understand that forcing the body to take in more nutrients at this time often worsens the condition over time. Next, we have an extreme intolerance to many vegetables, especially those high in potassium. As we know, in adrenal fatigue, the sodium tends to be low and potassium internally tends to be high on a relative basis, even though laboratory is normal. Potassium supports the body by maintaining the balance of water and acid, and even though high potassium vegetables can be helpful in normal people, and these include things like tomato and sweet potato, they can be problematic at this phase. Tomatoes, for example, are one of the highest potassium vegetables with over 400 milligrams per tomato. And tomato juice can be a problem, such as commercial vegetable drinks like a V8. A baked potato with skin is also high in potassium with about 508 milligrams of potassium. Many sports drinks, as well as commercially available vegetable juices, are best to be avoided because they can lead to symptoms including nervousness, agitation, heart palpitation, gastric bloatedness, and gastric pain. Those who indulge in food high in potassium are at risk, therefore, of adrenal crashes at this stage. Next, we have an extreme nervousness and the sense of impending doom. The exact cause is unknown, but chemical and neurotransmitter imbalances are likely to be involved in the central nervous system. In particular, we believe that the brain norepinephrine overload is probably the culprit. Peripherally, epinephrine overload from an overactive AHS may be implicated as well. So in addition to a wide variety of sympathetically driven responses, including sweating, anxiety, and irregular blood pressure, we associate that with nervousness centrally, and the more epinephrine release, for some reasons we don't understand, we have a sense of impending doom that is hard to describe. And clients would go into the emergency room feeling that the world is coming to an end, but everything checks out as normal. Next, we have uncomfortable head and chest contractions when your person arrives from a supine position. Most of these people by this time are already laying down in bed. They can hardly function with extreme fatigue. And when these contractions occur, they are not really hard in origin, resembling angina. These contractions are dull in nature. Cardiac workups are negative. It's unclear whether these contractions are due to exaggerated musculoskeletal reflex response or a loss of blood volume that triggers hormonal releases that lead to muscle contraction, or a catabolic state, muscle tearing of the fibers. But this is something that we see, and we really don't have a good explanation. Next, we have extreme sensitivity to gluten, wheat, and dairy products. Now, these sensitivities are already quite common early on in stage 3B and C, but tend to get worse in this phase. Now, just touching wheat products may initiate a reaction for those who are extremely sensitive. In other words, sensitivity increases and symptoms are more intense. Those who are constitutionally weak may have a concurrent pH imbalances, which leads to dysbiosis internally, and candida systemically may be common. Symptoms including bloating, itchiness, gastric pain, diarrhea, irritability, joint pain of unknown origin, a runny nose, heart palpitations, and insomnia. Next, some people have extreme sensitivity to massage, acupuncture, sauna, detoxification, or stress.